That window is glowing orange. The heater inside that hut is running at full power. And yet look at it. Icicles from the roof to the ground. Steam pouring straight through glass. Snow piled so thick on that curved metal shell, it looks like the building is slowly being buried alive. This man is freezing. He has fuel. He has heat. He has a structure around him, and he is still losing. Most people who own a Quonset hut go through exactly this. They buy the kit. They bolt it together. They feel like they built something tough, something military grade, something that could survive anything. And then winter hits, and they spend 3 months confused, cold, and burning through twice the propane they budgeted for. They add another heater. Still cold. They throw up some insulation bats. Still cold. They seal the door. Still cold. The problem is not their heater. The problem is that nobody told them the truth about what a Quonset hut actually is. It is a curved metal shell. That is it. Metal conducts cold better than almost any other building material on the planet. Steel ribs, corrugated panels, exposed fasteners. Every single component of a Quonset hut is designed for strength, for durability, for fast assembly. Not one of those components was designed to keep you warm. Without the right treatment, a Quonset hut is not a shelter from winter. It is winter wrapped around you in the shape of a building. That one fact is behind every single mistake we are about to cover. There are 12 of them. Fix all 12, and this building becomes one of the most efficient, comfortable, and nearly indestructible structures a man can live or work in. Miss even 3 of them, and you end up like the man in this image, pointing at a window in disbelief at -20. Let us start at the top. The first mistake is invisible. You will never see it, but you will feel it every single day of winter. When a Quonset hut is assembled, the steel ribs arch in the ground on one side, over the top, and back down to the ground on the other side. Those ribs are continuous. They run from outside to inside, without a single break in the metal. In building science, that is called a thermal bridge. The rib does not care that your interior is 70 degrees. It has one job, conduct temperature, and it conducts the -20 outside straight into your wall. You can insulate every inch of space between those ribs. You can do a perfect job. And the ribs themselves will bypass all of it. The fix is simple but non-negotiable. Before you add any other insulation, you cover the entire interior surface, ribs and all, with a continuous layer of rigid foam board, at least 2 inches. This breaks the thermal bridge. The rib no longer has a direct path to your living space. It is a small step. It is the most important step. Most owners skip it because nobody in the assembly manual mentions it. The second mistake costs people thousands of dollars, and they do not realize it until years later. Walk into almost any Quonset hut that an owner insulated himself, and you'll find fiberglass bats tucked between the ribs, pink or yellow rolls of fluffy material, pressed against curved metal, stapled to whatever they could find. It looks like insulation. It functions like almost nothing. Here's why. Fiberglass bats are engineered for flat, consistent wood frame cavities. A Quonset rib bay is curved, irregular, and made of cold metal. The bats compress against the metal and leave gaps along every curve. Cold air moves through those gaps freely. Worse, the cold metal chills the bats until moisture from the interior air condenses inside them. Wet fiberglass loses most of its insulating value, and it stays wet. Over time it compresses, sags, grows mold, and becomes completely useless, still sitting there looking like insulation while doing almost nothing. The correct material for a Quonset hut is closed-cell spray polyurethane foam. It bonds directly to the metal surface. It fills every curve, every gap, every irregular angle. It does not sag. It does not absorb moisture. It acts as its own vapor barrier, and its R value per inch is roughly double what fiberglass delivers. It costs more up front. It pays back that difference within the first 2 winters. The third mistake is doing the math wrong, or not doing the math at all. Most owners understand they need insulation. What they underestimate is how much a cold climate, anything with serious winter, anything with extended below freezing temperatures, requires R38 to R60 in the ceiling. The curved roof of a Quonset hut is both the ceiling and the wall. It is exposed to the full force of outdoor temperature on every square inch of its surface. Many Quonset builds end up with R13, sometimes R19. That is not a minor gap. That is like wearing a t-shirt in a blizzard when the requirement is a full expedition parka. 2 inches of closed-cell spray foam gives roughly R13. 3 inches gives R19. To hit R38, you need 6 inches minimum. To hit that in a Quonset, you often have to build a secondary interior frame, add rigid foam layers, and then finish the interior, a multi-layer system that takes planning in space. But there is no shortcut. Physics does not negotiate. Find your climate zone, find a requirement, and build to it before you move a single piece of furniture inside. Now here's where most Quonset owners think they are safe, and they are not. The end walls. A Quonset hut has 2 flat walls, one at each end where the arch terminates. These are usually wood-framed or metal-framed panels that attach to the curved shell. The junction where the curved steel meets the flat wall is one of the most complex intersections in construction. It is almost never airtight from the factory. There are gaps along the base of every rib where it meets the end wall frame. There are gaps where the skin panels overlap. There are gaps around every window frame and door frame, because those frames were installed into a curved surface and sealed with whatever was available at the time. Cold air does not need a large opening. A gap the width of a pencil running the full height of an end wall junction can deliver a continuous stream of -20 air directly into your living space. You cannot insulate your way past an air leak. Insulation slows conduction. It does nothing to stop infiltration. Every seam where the arch meets the end wall needs foam backer rod pressed in, followed by a high-quality sealant, followed by verification on a cold day by holding your hand along every inch of the joint and feeling for movement. Then treat every end wall as a full exterior wall, continuous insulation, an air barrier membrane, properly flash windows and doors. Not as an afterthought, as a priority. The 5th mistake has destroyed more insulation systems than any other single error: vapor barriers. In a cold climate, warm interior air carries moisture. When that moisture migrates outward through your wall or ceiling assembly and hits a cold surface, it turns to condensation, or in extreme cold, to ice. If that happens inside your insulation layer, the insulation fills with moisture and fails. If it happens on the inside face of the metal shell, you get ice forming on the interior of your own roof, which then drips on everything below when the heater runs. The vapor barrier must go on the warm side of the insulation, between the insulation and your living space. This is not negotiable, and it is not intuitive. Many builders put on the cold side by accident, or directly against the metal, which traps moisture inside the insulation layer and accelerates failure. The steam you see pouring through that window in the image is not just escaping heat. It is visible evidence of a moisture management failure. The interior is so saturated with moisture that it is condensing on the glass and steaming as it hits the cold outside air. That building has a vapor problem, not just a heat problem. 6 words that sum up the 6th mistake. Nobody insulated the floor. A concrete slab in contact with frozen ground is a heat sink that operates 24 hours a day. It does not matter how warm your walls and roof are. Cold radiates up from below, chills the air at floor level, and creates a layer of cold that the occupants live in. You can stand in a room that is 65 degrees on a thermometer and feel genuinely cold because the floor surface is 40 degrees and the air near your feet is 50. The fix is either rigid foam board installed under the slab before it is poured, the correct way, or a floating floor system built on top of the existing slab with foam underneath applied with subfloor. Neither solution is glamorous. Both are transformative. A man who has never experienced a properly insulated floor does not know what he is missing until first day he walks barefoot across one in January. The 7th mistake is death by 1,000 tiny holes. Every pipe that enters or exits the building, every conduit for electrical wiring, every ventilation duct, every exhaust penetration, every anchor bolt that passes through the shell. In a wood-framed house, these are sealed as a matter of course. In metal construction, they are often left raw. The installer drives in the fasteners, runs the pipe, moves on. Nobody caulks the metal-to-metal interface. Nobody foams a gap around the conduit. Each individual hole is small. Together, they add up to a significant and continuous source of cold infiltration. Take a cold winter day. Walk the exterior of the building slowly. Hold your bare hand near every penetration you can find. You will feel air movement at more of them than you expect. Fire-rated caulk for combustion penetrations. Expanding foam for everything else. Done before winter, not after. Now, let us talk about the mistake that turns a cold building into a genuinely unbearable one. A Quonset hut is a tube. It is typically long and narrow. The interior is one continuous space. If you place your only heat source at one end, the way most owners do, because the stove or furnace goes in near the door, you create a building where one end is warm and the other end is essentially outdoor temperature. The heater cycles on and off trying to satisfy a thermostat near itself while the far end of the building stays at ambient. This is not a heater problem. This is a distribution problem. The fix depends on the size of the hut. For smaller builds under 40 feet, essentially located with stove or propane heater with a ceiling fan, to push warm air toward the floor and down the length of the space can be adequate. For anything longer, a duct forced air system with registers positioned along the full length of the building is the correct solution. Radiant in-floor heat is a premium option and arguably the best fit for the shape of the building. Whatever method is chosen, the goal is even temperature from end to end, not a warm zone and a cold zone with an invisible line between them. The ninth mistake takes 10 seconds to understand, and most people have never thought about it. Every time the front door opens, the interior and exterior exchange air. Cold air falls in. Warm air rises out. In normal temperatures, this is a minor inconvenience. At -20, a single door opening can drop the interior temperature by several degrees in a matter of seconds. An airlock entry, also called a vestibule or a mudroom, solves this completely. It is a small enclosed space with two doors. You open the outer door, step in, close the outer door, then open the inner door. The two doors are never open at the same time. The cold air entering the outer door is contained in a small buffer space and never reaches the main interior. Military Quonset installations use this by default. Civilian builds skip it to save money or space. In a genuinely cold climate, the energy savings and comfort improvement from a proper airlock entry will be measurable within the first month. The 10th mistake is the counterintuitive one, and it is the one that surprises people most. You sealed everything. You foamed every gap. You layered on the insulation. The building is tight. Good. Now you have a problem you did not have before. A very tight building traps moisture. Every breath, every shower, every pot of boiling water, every wet boot drying by the door, all that moisture has nowhere to go. It builds up in the air until the relative humidity rises. Then it finds the coldest surface in the building, which in a Quonset hut is still the metal shell underneath the insulation, and condenses. Or it condenses on the interior face of windows. Or it finds a gap in the vapor barrier and migrates into the insulation layer. A tight building requires controlled mechanical ventilation, specifically a heat recovery ventilator. This device brings in fresh outdoor air and exhausts stale indoor air simultaneously, and the two air streams pass through a heat exchanger that transfers roughly 80% of the heat from the outgoing air into the incoming air. You get fresh air without losing the heat you paid to generate. It is not optional in a tight cold climate build. It is part of the system. The 11th mistake is visible in the image. Look at that window. Single pane. You can see condensation forming on the glass. Steam is hitting it and freezing. That window is essentially a rectangular hole in the wall with a thin sheet of glass stretched across it. The thermal resistance of single pane glass is roughly R1. Your insulated wall next to it might be R30. That window is negating weeks of careful insulation work through a relatively small area of glass. The door in the image is metal-clad. If it is hollow or minimally insulated, it is another thermal disaster in a frame. Every window in a cold climate Quonset hut should be double pane at an absolute minimum. Triple pane if the climate is severe. The frame should be thermally broken fiberglass or high-quality vinyl, not metal frames, which create their own thermal bridges. Doors should be insulated fiberglass or insulated steel with a magnetic threshold seal and proper weather stripping on all four sides. These are not luxury upgrades. They are minimum requirements. The 12th mistake is the one that ties all 11 others together, because it is the reason most of them never get fixed. The owner knows the building is cold. He does not know why. He has added insulation. He sealed some things. He bought a bigger heater. Nothing worked. He assumes the building is just cold. That Quonset huts are just like that there's nothing more he can do short of tearing everything out and starting over. What he has never done is diagnose the building. A thermal imaging camera, available for rental in most cities, or operated by any qualified energy auditor, transforms this problem completely. Point at your walls on a cold day when there is at least a 15-degree difference between inside and outside temperatures. Every thermal bridge shows up as a streak of blue or purple. Every air leak shows up as a sharp cold intrusion. Every section of failed or insufficient insulation shows up as a cool patch on what should be a uniform warm surface. In one walkthrough, you can locate every single problem we have discussed in this video. The thermal bridges of the ribs, the air infiltration at the end wall seams, the failed insulation behind a vapor barrier installed on the wrong side, the cold zone at the far end of the building. All of it visible, all of it mappable, all of it fixable once you know exactly where it is. A blower door test goes further. It pressurizes the building and measures total air leakage, giving you a single number that represents the overall tightness of your envelope. Before any major remediation work, run this test. After you fix everything, run it again. The improvement will be measurable, and the result will be a building that behaves like the structure it was always supposed to be. Here is where we land. That glowing orange window in the image is not a sign of comfort. It is a sign of heat, leaving a building it should have stayed inside. Those icicles are not weather. They are energy, converted from fuel you paid for, conducted through metal you did not break, escaped through seams you did not seal, and frozen on the outside of a building that is working against you because nobody fixed the 12 things that make it do exactly that. None of these mistakes are catastrophic on their own. Together, they compound. The thermal bridge feeds the moisture problem. The moisture problem defeats the insulation. The inadequate insulation overloads the heating system. The overloaded heater runs constantly, which saturates the interior with combustion byproducts, which requires ventilation, which you have not installed, which lets in cold air, which has to be heated again. They are a system, and the fix is a system too. Thermal break first. Close self-spray foam on every curved surface. Correct R value for your climate zone without compromise. End wall sealed at every junction like an exterior wall. Vapor barrier on the warm side, correctly placed, taped at every seam. Floor insulated before a single boot ever crosses it. Every penetration foamed and caulked. Heat distributed the full length of the building. An airlock entry at every exterior door. A heat recovery ventilator managing the interior air. High-performance windows and insulated doors throughout. And a thermal camera walked through the finished result to confirm that every fix actually worked. Do all of that in this building. This curved metal shell that everyone warned you about becomes genuinely extraordinary. It is stronger than a wood frame in wind and snow load. It is faster to build. It costs less per square foot. It lasts decades longer with almost no maintenance. The curved shape that conducts cold so efficiently in an untreated building becomes a structural advantage that almost nothing else can match once the thermal system is correct. The man in that image is pointing at a problem. Every single one of those problems has a solution. Now you know what they are.